What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Desai Guys Football Forum. I am one of your co-hosts, Summer Desai, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Desai Guys, Mr. Tad Desai. And Tad, dear Lord, you're just absolutely dominating in our head-to-head challenge. You are now at 5-0, and you've had two straight impressive wins. Actually, no, sorry, three straight impressive wins. It was the first two that were a lot closer. But yeah, I just didn't stand a chance these past 3 weeks. You certainly have the gift so far.
I am just that good, baby. That's why we decided to make this switch to fantasy football, because if I had these gifts, I want to share them with you people. So if you're smart, you listen to me and just completely ignore Amir. Just don't listen to him. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, it's been a very hot start, but knowing my luck, I'm about to start a 6-game losing streak right now because you jinxed me. So
we will see. So yes, definitely when it comes to DFS, definitely listen to whatever Tad has to offer, because he has the Midas touch right now.
That's my favorite thing about DFS is I am such a trade hound, and I even told people this. If I don't know if you can find this video anymore, but we may be able to re-upload it. But I said in the interview at the Denny's when I was serving the fantasy football punishment, I almost never start or never finish the fantasy football season with the same roster I started it with. I'm pretty sure. I need to double check to make absolutely sure, but I'm like 90% sure in my other league I fulfilled that prophecy yet again, that the roster I currently have going, not a single player I drafted is on that roster now. But DFS encourages that type of behavior. So that's why I love DraftKings so much.
But honestly, just really quick tangent before we jump into our value players here for DFS is that's actually a good rule of thumb when you're handling your season-long fantasy rosters, is that you need to be sort of playing with your roster and always adjusting, because that's the way that you sort of keep your roster competitive the entire season. Because it's like, I think we talked about this with Jake Seeley before, that's like you have to deal with it in three. So it's like a third of it, your strategy has to be a draft. Third of it has to be how you play the waiver wire. But then a third of it's also just luck. Like, certain things happen. Like you said, you traded away Derrick Henry. He went down with an injury. It's like you had no idea that was going to happen.
That
totally worked out for you.
That was not luck. How dare you, sir? That was
totally worked out for you. But for the guy who actually acquired him, it's like, oh, okay, I got this stud who's, fortunately now in the stable now. He's not going to be a guy that's riding out there.
And another big name, because we were saying at the time, is a guy in our league had Michael Thomas. He drafted him in the second to last round, and we're like, that is a great get, because what did he do? He took Michael Thomas, booted him to the IR spot. So great, you basically just drafted a guy for free, essentially. Well, news just broke a couple days ago that Michael Thomas is out for the rest of the season. So what looked to be a great move now was basically a waste of a draft pick. But at the time, we all thought it was one of the best draft picks. It's just, exactly, it's all luck at a certain point in the season.
Exactly. But yes, just a quick tangent there. But yeah, let's sort of jump into our DFS value players for week 9 here. Like we talked about, I think my advice is probably going to be useless in this segment, but definitely listen to whatever Tad has to say here. So Tad, who's the first guy that you want to talk about here, whether it's good value or bad value or mediocre value for week 9?
I always look for whenever someone asks me, hey, what's the best value this week? Look for your best value quarterback, because quarterbacks are always weirdly undervalued in fantasy football. I know there's a smaller amount of good running backs, so that's why that certain position is always ranked higher. But look, if you can find that truly great quarterback, he will elevate your team a lot. If it's a week-by-week basis or as DFS does, or a season-long basis. And I don't understand this price whatsoever. That's Joe Burrow at $6,800. That makes no sense to me. The only thing I can think of that justifies this price is the fact that he lost to the Jets this past week. But even then, you got to be smarter than that, because you look at what Joe Burrow has done this season, and you have to remember that Jets loss was hardly his fault. And with what he's done the past couple of weeks, he's coming off 3 straight games with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, which, by the way, that's a weirdly consistent performance of hey, I had 3 touchdowns and no picks. I got to throw that 1 pick because I had that 3-to-1 ratio going on. I got to keep that ratio, running. But the other impressive stat with Joe Burrow is for 5 straight weeks, he's at 20-plus points. So I always say with quarterbacks, 15 plus points is kind of the benchmark, right? If your quarterback scores 16 or 17, it's not great. You don't love it, but you can't really be that mad. 'Cause you're like, okay, you kind of did your job. He's had 5 straight weeks of 20 plus points. So he is proven to be a consistent starter. How is he going for less than $7,000? That is absolutely beyond me. And look, I think this is part of it too, is that Cleveland is getting a well-deserved rep of being a very formidable defense to go against. But you actually look where Cleveland tends to do well. I am going to ignore the Arizona Cardinal game. I think that was a bit of an outlier. But they tend to do just okay against the good offenses. And before anyone yells at me, well, you're not talking about the Minnesota offense. That Minnesota offense is so inconsistent. They're not in the good category. They're in the okay category, mediocre, I don't know, decent category, but they are not in the good category. So I will say when Cleveland plays a legitimately good offense, they tend to be a little bit middle tier. And when it comes to the passing defense, even less than the middle tier. They're currently ranked as a 27th best passing defense when it comes to fantasy. So I think Joe Burrow is in line for a pretty good week this week. I won't say amazing. I'd be shocked if he got more than 25 points, but I think he'll finish in that 17 to 24 range.
Yeah, he's clearly, what sort of makes that offense go. And I mean, his play has definitely made the Bengals the team that they are, make the team so competitive this season, make them a potential winners of the AFC North. So yeah, I think, you put the game on Burrow's shoulders. He's sort of proven that he could sort of pull things out. Fortunately, it didn't happen against the Jets, but
he's literally that Greg Jenkins video of like, what, with a broken leg, he put the team on his back.
So yeah, definitely, at a price that's under $7,000. I mean, that's an amazing price, and definitely you need to go with him if you have the ability to. So I actually have another quarterback that I think could put top tier numbers under the $7,000 price, and that's Dak Prescott versus the Denver Broncos. Now, you look at Dak Prescott, and he had the calf issue. There was questions about whether he was going to play in last week's game against the Minnesota Vikings, actually. He was taking all his practice reps and looked...
Yet more evidence of the Minnesota Vikings offense is good. Really? Because they couldn't keep up with Cooper Rush.
So he was taking all his practice reps before the game. It looked like he was pretty normal. Everything was looking okay, but I think the coaches made the smarter move that's like, hey, let's preserve you for the rest of the season. Let's keep you going for the entire season. Let's let Cooper Rush, who's taking the first team reps the entire week, let's let him play. They obviously were able to pull out the victory, and they were able to preserve Dak Prescott, but everything is clear to go. He's been practicing this entire week. He's good to go for this game against the Denver Broncos, and I mean, Prescott is one of 5 quarterbacks currently averaging over 300 yards per game right now. Like, I mean, that's insane when you think about the fact that he's only played in about 7 games now. He obviously dealt with the injury. He missed 1 game, obviously, but it's just like he's coming back to form, and as the season progresses, you're just going to see more of that. He's also tied for the 8th most passing touchdowns in the league, and he's boasting the highest completion percentage as well. So, I mean, it's like, not only is he airing it out, but he's airing it out efficiently. So he's getting it to the right guys. They're making the right catches. It's a really good offense with Dak Prescott under center. Now, they are playing a tough defense in the Denver Broncos, who are allowing the 2nd fewest passing touchdowns in the NFL right now, tied surprisingly with Minnesota. Once again, got to bring them up, and both LA teams, the Chargers and the Rams. But, Tad, here's a caveat here. So, here are the quarterbacks that the Broncos have faced in the current, however long the season has gone now, through 8 weeks or so. Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Ben Roethlisberger, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and Tyler Heineke. So, yes.
That's a lot up and down you just threw at me.
I'd probably say 2 of those quarterbacks are worth actually game planning for. The rest of them are like, you can get by.
Real quick, what are those 2? Because there's one in there I think we might disagree on.
For me, it's probably Lamar Jackson and Derek Carr.
Wow, you don't think you need a game plan for Baker?
Not so much. Based on that offense, I don't think so as much.
Cleveland fans, hey, that his hat's down there.
Come at me. Ooh, Steve Smith Sr. was also on this as well. I mean, we'll get to that probably in another episode, but just, yeah. So I don't think they faced the stiffest competition, which sort of inflated their stats. So this is probably the best quarterback they faced so far in Dak Prescott. And I mean, like I said, in this offense, he's playing a lot better. Got sensational weapons, obviously, with CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott. Dalton Schultz is really coming into his own as their tight end now. So, I mean, it's like they got a lot of great options on the offense there. Dak Prescott, like I said, is playing really, really well coming off that horrific injury from last season. And like I said, for under $7,000, I think you could get a really, really good value here, putting top tier QB1 numbers at probably like a QB2 sort of price, because, you know, when you're paying for that premium price at the quarterback position, you're expecting a lot of value. So that's why you want to avoid your Josh Allens, your Lamar Jacksons, who are over the 7,500 mark usually for the most part. So for this, getting a really good quarterback at Dak Prescott or Joe Burrow in your case as well for under 7,000, that's just going to help you build out the rest of your roster. So I really like Dak Prescott this week.
Well, and you also have to, well, first off, shout out for Dak Prescott for being a hurt quarterback and not doing a douchey 2-minute solo drill at the goal line pregame. Hey, man, when you're a hurt quarterback, you can just kind of sit there and not look like a tryhard. So shout out to him for not doing that. But I will also say you have to keep in mind when it comes to specifically the Broncos, that Von Miller trade could be a huge morale hit.
That's a big one too.
I think this will prove to be the anchor on their season. Is that they've done okay so far. I don't think anyone's really expecting them to win the division, but it would not surprise me to see this team really take a dip from here on out, because that's clearly the front office just giving up on the season. So, I like Dak Prescott a lot this week. I think that's a great pick.
Cool. So we both got some good value quarterbacks here for this week. Tad, let's move it to a non-quarterback position. Who else do you like in week 9 here?
I mean, this is another pricing that I think is just absolutely insane, but it does make a little bit more sense. I'm going with another AFC North player. That's Nick Chubb at $6,700. This one makes a little bit more sense. He's coming off a 7.4 point performance, but it's only because Dearness Johnson vultured a touchdown away from him. And I'm sorry, if you have Nick Chubb, you have to be aware you're going to suffer a week or two like that, where he's just going to have a touchdown vulture away from him. Granted, normally you think it's Kareem Hunt, but it just happened because Kareem Hunt is still hurt. That was Dearness Johnson. I think that's a little bit of an overreaction of people still be like, oh my God, Dearness Johnson's on such a hot streak. If you actually look at his stats from this past week, not 2 weeks ago, because he absolutely killed it on Thursday Night Football 2 weeks ago. But if you
2 weeks ago, Chubb and Hump did not play, so of course it's going to be Dearness Johnson.
But that's the thing is, I think people don't think of that correlation, right? Is they just look at all the stats and go, oh my God, Dearness Johnson's on a hot streak, so that must mean he's overtaking Nick Chubb. He's not overtaking Nick Chubb. Relax. He vultured one touchdown. Because if Nick Chubb got that touchdown, he would have finished for around 13 or 14 points, which is still not amazing for what you pay, but that's not bad either. 7.8 looks bad. 13.8 looks fine. So there's a very stark difference there. So I think this is a bit of a knee-jerk overreaction to really his first bad week of the season, if you look at it. Because I know he's had bad weeks before that, but that's been due to injury. This is the first bad week he's had just because of the way the game worked. So I really like Nick Chubb here, and I think this is another reason his price is so low. This Cincinnati Bengals defense, and Murray, you talked about this, I don't know if that was last week or 2 weeks ago. This Bengals defense is legit. But you have to look at it fantasy-wise. This is the mistake a lot of people make, is this Bengals defense is good on the field, but fantasy-wise, they do have an Achilles heel, and that's other teams' running backs. They really, really struggle to contain other teams' running backs. So I think Nick Chubb's honestly set up pretty well against other teams' defenses because, since week 2, Cincinnati's allowed I'm actually going to quiz you here real quick, Amir. I'm a teacher. I'm used to this. So, pop quiz. Since week 2, what do you think is the least amount of points that Cincinnati has given up to opposing team running backs?
Team running backs, right?
Team
so I'd
running
probably
backs,
say the least amount of points, I'd probably say 45.
All right. Sorry, I should per game. So
per game.
Per game. Yeah, sorry.
Let's do it 31.
I don't think I'm phrasing this very well. But basically, per game, so they, week by week, they've allowed at least 16 points to other running backs on the opposing team.
Okay.
So that means that I know that the whole split carry thing is a little funky, especially with PPR. That can be a little weird as well. But basically, if you are starting a running back against the Bengals since week 2, you are almost guaranteed that your running back's going to score at least 8 points. And honestly, unless he's doing an exact even split, probably more. So I think Nick Chubb, especially for $6,700, is set up for a pretty good week. I'm not going to say he's scoring like 30 or 40. I don't think he's going to have a historically good week. Watch him go off for 60 now that I just said that. But I think he's going to go back to that, 15 to 20 range that we're used to. And especially for $6,700, that's a pretty good range because, man, these running backs are dropping like flies.
Yeah, I think the big thing, though, is that with Odell Beckham now voluntarily away from the team, like the team told him to stay home.
I heard
the team told him to stay home.
Well, that's not voluntary then.
Well, I meant like the team is like, I don't know, maybe there's a better way to put it, but pretty much the team told him to stay home. They don't want him on this team essentially anymore. So that sort of affects your passing game. So once again, the Cleveland Browns, they don't operate through the passing game anyways. They go through the run.
Another important thing is Donovan Peoples-Jones and two their tight, not Hooper, Njoku and who's their other tight? Harrison Bryant. Yeah, so Njoku, Harrison Bryant, and Donovan Peoples-Jones are all questionable.
Yeah, so when you look at things like that, it makes you, Cleveland goes through their running game anyway, so Nick Chubb is definitely going to get the volume carries, as long as he's healthy and everything's good to go during that game. The only thing that worries me is that if Cincinnati knows that they don't need to put so much pressure on the passing game and force them to beat them on the ground, that they could sort of slow down Nick Chubb. Not completely stop him because Nick Chubb is just one of the better running backs in the league, so he'll get his yardage and he'll get you a good amount of points. The only thing is just, I don't know if he's absolutely going to go off and give you like RB1 type of numbers in DFS. So that's the only thing that worries me. But also, you have to look at a guy who's talking had 0-5 in our head-to-head challenge, so maybe I'm completely wrong too, but for me it's like I think he'll give you good numbers but not great numbers. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
All right, so real quick, I will run people through this really quickly. So week 3, the Cincinnati Bengals defense gave up 22 points to Steelers running backs, 20 points in week 3 to Jacksonville running backs, 29 points, actually it's 29.8, so let's round up to 30 because it makes me sound better, to Green Bay running backs, 16 points to Detroit running backs. Okay, good for you. 16 points to Baltimore running backs, and 45 points to New York Jets running backs. I'm seeing running back 1 numbers here.
One caveat I'll also say is that all those teams, the running backs are dual purpose. Nick Chubb is purely just a runner.
You're going to call the New York Jets a dual purpose running back team? Really?
Michael Carter? Yes.
I'm waiting for a second name here.
Doesn't matter. Michael Carter's the one who did most of the damage last week.
That's what I'm saying. That's what Nick Chubb is going to do to them.
But it's not through the air, too. I think it's only through the ground.
Get out. No, see, normally if Kareem Hunt was in, 100% I agree with you. Of like, Nick Chubb, honestly, if Kareem Hunt was healthy, Nick Chubb would probably be on the opposite end of this, where I go, he's overvalued. Are you really telling me Dearness Johnson's going to steal that many targets away from Nick Chubb? Get out.
Not that many, but enough to make it,
Get out of here. Get out of here. 6-0. 6-0. I'm pulling the card. 6-0.
Fair enough. Let's move on to my value pick here. That is
the most heated we've gotten since we started this fantasy segment.
Let's move to my value pick, and that's Hunter Renfro versus the New York Giants for only $4,800 this week. So
Ridiculous.
He's usually always bargain price. I mean, that's usually the case with Hunter Renfro, but especially with the unfortunate news that Henry Ruggs is released by the Raiders, he's probably not going to be playing NFL for a long time with this DUI charge and unfortunately killing a person. That's just, that's a sign that you're not going to be playing football. You have other things to worry about.
Get an Uber, people. Get an Uber.
Yeah, I just don't know about that one. But anyway, so because of that news, they are going to have to obviously spread out the targets that Ruggs was initially getting. That's going to have to spread around the team. That's obviously increase of Darren Waller as well. Brian Edwards may get a little bit more involved, and obviously Hunter Renfro. They're coming off a bye week as well, which is the perfect time to sort of implement more of what Greg Olsen wants to do on offense. We talked about this, that they've been playing well the past 2 weeks with Greg Olsen as the play caller. I think you can just see a lot more now with the full week week of practice to sort of go over things that's like, okay, these things worked. Maybe we could tweak a few things here. Maybe we could install this particular type of play. It's like we may be able to see more of that in these coming weeks and obviously the rest of the season, which is obviously a good thing for Derek Carr and this offense. So you look at Hunter Renfrow and I mean, like, he's got a fantastic matchup against the bye week because you look at the New York Giants, they're allowing the 9th most DFS fantasy points to opposing wide receivers in the NFL. In relation to that, they're allowing the 11th most passing yards and the 9th most passing touchdowns. So, I mean, this is a really good bargain option, like I said, for Hunter Renfrow for only $4,800. Like, I mean, he's going to get a lot of targets in this offense because, you know, with the loss of Henry Ruggs, Darren Waller's going to play good, but Hunter Renfrow out of the slot, I mean, he was already one of the more targeted options in this offense anyways, but now with the loss of Henry Ruggs, I think they're going to rely on him a little bit more out of the slot, possibly put him on the outside as well. We may see some more Bryan Edwards, but like I said, that price, it's hard to beat because this just means that you can spend a little bit more in some of the other positions. You can pay up at a quarterback position, get a more premium quarterback if you want to. You can spend up a little bit at the tight end position. You can spend up at the running back position. I mean, there's so many other ways you could go when you can afford to get a really good quality player for under $5,000. I mean, this is insanity. So value play, really like Hunter Renfrow this week.
Yeah, I really like this pick as well. I agree with you. I was a little hesitant to record this as early as Thursday because I do think his price it has to change. It has to. That's way too cheap for a guy like this because I don't understand it. Basically is what I'm trying to say because I don't think Renfro is really going to blow you away with yardage numbers, but in terms of reception and especially in terms of receptions in the red zone, I love it. I think he is absolutely good for at least one touchdown. And here's my prediction. He's going to have something around like 8 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown, which doesn't sound that impressive. But again, fantasy-wise, that's one of those sneaky like 14 to 16 point range performances that helps you eke out that win. So I love this pick.
No, 100%, because you have to think about the fact that he's second on the Raiders in targets, first in receptions, and second in receiving yards. So I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes the season close to those similar stat ranges, because obviously you have to factor in Darren Waller as well.
Hard. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, but that's the thing is I think defenses are it's similar to Mahomes. Is defenses are starting to figure out Waller a little bit. Like he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not saying Mahomes isn't going to be a monster, but I don't see Waller being this like all-time great tight end that we were starting to build him up as because he was showing flashes of that, but I think honestly it was kind of looking like just that was pure athleticism that the NFL was just like, all right, we just need to spend an offseason really figuring this out. And I'm not sure Waller's ever going to get back to his peak that he was at last season.
It's possible. It's possible. We will see what the bye week was able to do for the entire Raiders offense, but I see a lot of optimism with this team. So let's move in, though, Tad, really quickly to our bad value players. You know, who's a guy that you just should not be paying for in DFS this week?
I'm not saying this guy's going to have a bad week. I think he'll probably end up in that 10 to 15 point range, but for $7,700 you can do a lot better. You can kind of disperse your money a little bit smarter than that, and that's Dalvin Cook. I mean, man, this is the type of season I thought Dalvin Cook was going to have last year, and it just turns out my prediction was just a year too late because he's been dealing with an on and off ankle injury, so that's been a lot of the reasons for you look at where Dalvin Cook's rankings are. He's like running back 22, 23, kind of depends on what format you're in. So I won't put a whole lot of stock in like, oh my God, look how low he is on the rankings because he's only, played like 3 or 4 games this season. But that's another reason. You have no idea when this dude's going to get tackled wrong. He's going to be out for the rest of the game. And tell me there's a worse feeling in fantasy football when you see your guy walking off the field and you're like, please don't go. No, come back. No, don't go in the blue tent. Don't go in the blue tent. You're fine. Come out of the blue tent. So, I mean, that has to be what's like having Dalvin Cook on your roster. And here's the bigger performance outside of the injury is the fact that he actually tends to struggle. I won't say good defenses. Here's an interesting thing to note. He actually tends to struggle against teams that consistently do well with good defensive lines. So the rest of your defense can suck. But if the defense tends to get good penetration on, I'm not even going to say bad, because that Minnesota Vikings offensive line isn't bad. They're just not great. So you look at what he did against the Browns in particular. He only had 6 points against the Browns. He only had 8 points against the Cowboys. So not only is he injury prone, he's inconsistent. So look, I know that the Ravens are a very intimidating defense, and rightfully so on paper. And some people may go, well, Ted, you just said fantasy-wise, look at what they've done. And they've allowed 20 points to the Bengals the other week. And here's the thing. They were, and take it from me, I have Joe Mixon on my roster in my other league. They were shutting Joe Mixon down until the fourth quarter. Thank God for that fourth quarter garbage time touchdown, because that salvaged his week. The Ravens have, in basically consecutive weeks, shut down Austin Eckler and Joe Mixon in back-to-back weeks, if you just cut out garbage time. So with an inconsistent, injury-prone Dalvin Cook being the fourth or fifth most expensive running back, I don't like the value. Again, I'm not saying he's going to totally bust. I think he'll do fine. I think he'll finish middle tier, like I said, 10 to 15 points. But for $7,700, you better be giving me 15 points or more.
No, that's fair. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just with the value that you're going to be paying for him, you need to get the good return. And just, I don't know if it's going to equate enough to warrant paying that sort of price for Dalvin Cook. So I agree with you completely. That's probably a smarter option to go with a different player. So similar to you, I have another running back that probably you can avoid paying for, and it's Cordarrelle Patterson versus the New Orleans Saints. You have to pay $6,300 for him this week. Now, yes, he's clearly supplanted Mike Davis, who's just... I really just don't know what happened to Mike Davis. We were both so high on him going into the season. Thought he was absolutely going to be like the second coming of Michael Turner,
I think it's kind of like the Darren Waller thing we were talking about. It was like lack of game planning, and that they were just like, we have no idea what this dude can do. And now that, teams kind of spent all offseason being like, oh, okay, this is how he plays. That's the only logical explanation I have.
No, it's fair. It's fair. Just, yeah. So it's clearly been
Football's
Cordarrelle Patterson.
Weird, man. Football's weird.
It is. It is. So, he's clearly supplanted. And also with the news that Calvin Ridley is taking some time off to deal with his mental health issues, power to him. That's, a hard thing to sort of admit to yourself and sort of take that time off. So not sure when he's going to be coming back, if he comes back, but it just means that there's going to be more targets to go around to the other players, Russell Gage, Olamide Zaccheaus. I mean, there's Kyle Pitts, obviously. Cordarrelle Patterson, though, is going to get a lot of these targets because he has been one of the feature points of this passing offense. Long term, I think he still has great value, but just for this week against the Saints have a really good defense. They're riding high off of beating the Buccaneers. They want to keep pace in the NFC South, so they're going to be playing really well. And Patterson's going against the defense. Like I said, the really good defense. Fourth fewest yards allowed in the league. Second fewest points allowed. And are tied for the seventh most turnovers forced on defense. Also, they've allowed the second fewest DFS points to running back. So, I mean, this is a defense that could shut down the running back position. So, there may be times where, he will be able to get some garbage time later, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. Also, another factor, Jameis Winston tore his ACL. He's out for the year. And Taysom Hill is still not back yet. So they're going to be going with Trevor Siemian. So I just don't think there's enough of a threat with Trevor Siemian passing the ball that you're going to have to worry about him as a threat on defense. So you're going to focus most of your game plan on shutting down Cordarrelle Patterson. And it's just, defense is going to bring their A game. They're really going to bring all our efforts to win another divisional game. Like I said, keep pace in the NFC South. So there's a lot of cheaper options that you can go with that can get a better return on your value. Like we talked about with Dalvin Cook, you could pay a better price and you can get a better return on your investment cheaper than Cordarrelle Patterson. So Josh Jacobs versus the Giants, he's only $6,200.
Love that one. He's good.
That's a really good addition. Elijah Mitchell, he's practicing, he's healthy, $5,800 versus the Cardinals.
I want to ask you, is he practicing? Because I saw a questionable tag on him. So
no, he has been practicing. Okay. He is most likely going to start. So $5,800 for Elijah Mitchell versus the Cardinals. That's going to be a good value there. On the other side of the wall, you got Chase Edmonds and James Conner, both $5,300 versus the 49ers. And Boston Scott, who vultured 2 touchdowns last week. I think he may be in line for very similar work against the Chargers. He's $5,200. He's a little bit more of a riskier play, but I think he could possibly get another touchdown. And so, Cordarrelle Patterson, like I said, for long term, I still think he has a lot of great value, but just this week against the Saints, you could probably go in a different direction.
I will also give a shout out to another guy who's cheaper, is Chuba Hubbard. He is playing the 25th ranked Patriots rush defense. I think he's got, I don't think the Panthers offense is going to do that great against the Patriots. I mean, you can ask Murr. I'm starting the Patriots defense in our league this week. At least I think I am. I need to check on that. But but I still think Chuba Hubbard is at least good for a touchdown, and I'm just not so sure your guy is. Like, it's just, I like this pick for a little overvalue there. It's just, there's so much uncertainty, and this is why you guys know very well at this point. Saints and Falcons, very popular teams in our betting segment on our podcast of teams to stay away from when it comes to betting, because I don't know what these teams are. And now one team has a guy with a broken left hand with Matt Ryan, because there is no way that hand is not broken. That was like gushing blood. And you have another team that's starting freaking Trevor Siemian and talking to Phillip Rivers, who, take it from a Colts fan, is a statue at this point. So, like, no, dude, just stay away. Honestly, if you have any fantasy player in this game, just for the sake of your sanity, just bench them. Find someone better.
Very true. Very true. So those are our value plays for this week and week 9 for DFS here. If you definitely need some more advice, maybe hit up Tad more than me this week if you're talking about DFS stuff. You can see all of our Twitter handles at this ticker
I feel like
below.
Tom Brady. I gotta do that SI cover or something like this, like that.
You got my handle, I'm Desai 23. You got Tad's at Tad Desai 94. You got the show handle at the Desai Guys. Talk to us about DFS stuff. Talk to us about season-long fantasy football, dynasty football. I mean, anything and everything. We're here to talk to you, to help you out with your fantasy rosters, with your stardom sit-ins, with trade advice, with anything and everything in between. And yeah, Tad is showing off the t-shirt. If you like it, you want to represent the brand here, we got your link below in the comments. Get the shirt. You get a darker shirt like Tad has. I have a lighter shirt. There's a lot of options out there.
My buddy sent me a picture the other day of him wearing a yellow shirt. I'm like, I didn't even know we came in yellow.
Yeah. There's a lot of great options. If you don't want a t-shirt, there's sweatshirts, there's, pillows, there's mugs, there's notebooks. I mean, there's a lot of other options you can get with our awesome brand logo on it. So appreciate you guys supporting the brand. If you guys can go out there and get some stuff. And yeah, we appreciate everybody that's tuning in on the video. We're tuning in on the podcast, tuning in anywhere and everywhere, giving us a good rating, listening, following, anything and everything in between. Just can't thank you guys enough.
Thanks for watching, everybody.